Welcome to the first episode of WLF Milestones, where we remember so you never forget. Our co-host is Curtis Woodward, and we've got a very special guest a little bit later. And tonight we're going to revisit one of the most famous rugby league judiciary cases of all time, when the Towering Inferno Mark Geyer, then with the Western Reds, was accused of saying to Perth-based touch judge Martin Weeks in 1996, I know where you live. It turns out Geyer disliked Martin Weeks long before they locked horns at the Wacker on May 5 of that year. During the game, won 32-12 by Canberra. Geyer explains in this clip from Triple M in 2012.
Martin Weeks was a touch judge in 1991 who, when we played in the grand final, he came running in with his flag and disallowed a try that Penrith had scored legitimately. So we gave him the nickname TV Weeks.
That's good.
Every time there's a TV game, he'd come in with his flag. So when I went to Perth, lo and behold, there's Martin Weeks, who's living in Perth. Actually, he's not a touch judge who travels over each week to play, to officiate the Western Reds game. He's there. He's a sand grabber, exactly.
Curtis, what do you know? Did you know much about this story?
No, absolutely not. And through history, I've been a little bit younger than yourself, Steve, with all due respect, despite the fact that you look 15 years younger than me, mate. When you think about Mark Geyer, you think about things that you hear over and over in the media about Mark Geyer in 91 with the Origin and stuff like that. But when you think Mark Geyer, you think hard on his sleeve, not just as a player, but as a man as well. And I think he played on the edge, and he needed to play on the edge because that is what made him a better player. But at the same time, too, being such an emotional player, it also hurt him at different times as well. So it kind of plagued his career, but I guess as well, being that kind of player, it spurred you on to do better things. I mean, people forget that Mark Geyer was a kangaroo tourist. In all seriousness, at his peak of his powers, he was one of the best second rowers in the game. But the things that made him the one of the best second rowers in the game, it also hindered him as well, and that plagued him throughout his career. And I personally think that if you look through everything Mark Geyer did in his career, all the ups and downs, someone from Channel 9 or Stan or something should be getting onto him and saying, look, we want to make a little mini TV series out of this, because some of the stories are crazy. And the way it turned out, obviously, he's one of the best media men in the game now because he's a good bloke. But at the time, you'd think back then it was a crazy time to be Mark Geyer, I'm sure.
At this stage, I should point out much of the research for this episode was done for twotribes.substack.com, where I'm laying a narrative foundation, if you will, for my upcoming book, Two Tribes, about the divided season of 1997 and the birth of the NRL. You automatically pre-order Two Tribes, and you get an immediate copy of my first book, Touchstones, which I have here. You also get access to paywall content for 27 months, and it's a one-off cost of $45. Now, the only disciplinary discussion after the game in 1996 was about Rodney Howe being placed on report by referee Rob Alexander. But by Tuesday night, Geyer was up before the judiciary accused of intimidating an in-goal judge, throwing a water bottle at a linesman and threatening a linesman. I covered the first of the two hearings it took to deal with the matter. I was working at the Sydney Morning Herald at the time. I was a couple of years younger than MG at 27. And the night I attended at Phillip Street with Geyer appearing by video link was quite amazing. Geyer claimed in-goal judge Tony Butler had an axe to grind with him since he was 14 and weeks of inventing the water bottle story. However, Geyer later had this to say on radio.
As I did, I grabbed the water bottle from one of the trainers, and I just kind of bombed it like a hand grenade at him.
Weeks had told the hearing he had warned Geyer about dissent, and MG, as he walked away, retorted, I know where you live, bro. I know where you live. Weeks said this had caused him to fear for himself and his family. He said, language doesn't bother me. It goes straight over my shoulder. I always remember thinking that was a strange phrase, over my shoulder. I don't think I've heard it since. He said, you don't normally mind, but this player decided to have a dip back and threaten myself and my family. Guy's defence was that he actually said, remember where you live, as in give the local team a fair go. Again, from 2012.
I said to Martin Weeks he was a cheat.
Yep.
And I said, you only come on when you go, there's a TV game?
Yep. And?
Okay. Oh, you want to go there?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, man.
Come on, mate.
I said, I know where you live.
You often wonder, Curtis, how many fibs are told of the judiciary. It takes years to get to the bottom of it.
Oh, particularly back then. And if you want to go further back then, if you want to talk about like the Dragons, like I think it was Frank Bumper Farrell, when he bit someone's ear off in a scrum in the 1940s and stuff like that. You can just imagine back in those days, and even up to the mid-90s, where there wasn't a scrutiny with the judiciary that you see today. Stuff like, mobile phones and 15 journalists out the front of, the court as they go in, or Phillip Street, or wherever they are now. You can just imagine the kind of stories you would get. And at the end of the day, it really was, if there wasn't a TV game per se, then it really was up to the word of the player and the officials at the ground. That's really what it was up to, right?
There were some great quotes from Ron Coote, who was on the judiciary that night. He told Geyer from the top table, part of rugby league is discipline, Mark. When those lessons are being handed out, I don't know where you were. You think all the touch judges, referees and everyone are against you? Your discipline gets the best of you. Geyer responded to an absolute legend, that's your opinion. And he also accused the Judiciary Chairman, Alan Sullivan, of trying to put words into his mouth. As we're about to see, this indiscipline was about to get an airing indoors over these 2 nights at Phillip Street. Before we move on to the second night of hearings, I'm guessing there's a lot of Penrith fans watching. Check out these fantastic pink Panthers jerseys. Officially licensed, which I'm selling on my own store. Check out the show notes for the links, and UK postage is free with the checkout code YouTube. Now, it's not a paid product placement because I'm the one who buys them, I'm the one who stores them, I'm the one who sends them to you. As these t-shirts from Denver, £5 from the Denver test, free postage with that same checkout code, which is YouTube. The hearing had gone for 4 hours. It was adjourned till the following evening. I usually had Wednesday off, so I probably went downstairs to the bar if it was still open. I had the next day off, probably slept till midday. Mike Kozlowski covered the following night, and that's where I want to bring in our guest. He's been patiently waiting, the Ken Stephen medalist and Steelers legend, Michael Bolt, who was on the judiciary for the case. Michael, welcome to the program. Were you there for both nights?
Yeah, it was, Stevie. Long couple of days.
Why did it take 2 nights, do you think? Was it just because it got too late?
Well, there was a case on before, and then there was a few. It was the first time we'd actually done a video hearing, and because normally, back then everyone, they came into the big house at Phillip Street and had to sit down and be good boys and do all that sort of stuff. But this being a video, it certainly was a bit of a different thing, and they had a couple of teething problems with it, and that sort of delayed it whilst it went on. And then, when we had a bit of a kerfuffle with Mr. Geyer, so it's we sort of had to go on a bit longer.
Interestingly, given the audio we played earlier, Alan Sullivan on the second night, Michael, he found that Geyer had not intended to throw the water bottle, but had indeed thrown it backwards over his head from the bench while looking the other way. So this is what Geyer later admitted.
And he looked around on the bench, and I don't know how he thought it was me because everybody else was watching the game, but I was looking behind myself to try and throw him off the track.
Sullivan pointed out that MG had appeared before the judiciary 8 times in 11 years. He said Geyer's behaviour was not in the interest of rugby league or the promotion of the game in Western Australia or anywhere else. Michael, can you tell us about the second night particularly, and about, was it mainly legal argument, and how did you go about finding the verdict of a 6-week ban?
Yeah, look, it was a bit difficult because it's it was certainly a bit of uncharted waters. That sort of it was more bringing the game into disrepute than sort of like a high tackle or whichever. So it became difficult. So we were sort of guided a lot by Alan Sullivan, him being the legal brain behind it all, and we sort of came up with a penalty on discussion that we just said, well, we got to, this can't be tolerated, and so we had to sort of make a bit of a showing for it to make it stick, basically. But yeah, so it was quite a long couple of days. You can remember that, that's for sure. But yeah, Alan guided us very well, as he always did.
Geyer commented afterwards, "You've just taken away 6 weeks of my life and probably another 35,000 in match payments. I've got a baby on the way. Have a bit of compassion." And there was a significant aftermath too. Geyer had appeared by video link, as you mentioned, and after the decision was handed down, Michael, do you want to take up the story there?
Well, yeah, because what had happened is the audio went, but the visual was still going. And I don't think Mark realised that. And so he's given us the finger, and I happened to be watching the vision. The other boys weren't. And I said, whoa. And so they played that back, and then we brought him back in again. And so that, he was upset with the whole thing, and obviously he couldn't control his emotions at that stage. And so, yeah, given us the finger probably wasn't a real smart move, especially with the camera still rolling. But the sound had gone off, so he probably presumed everything had gone, but it hadn't.
Yeah, you said, well, with attitudes like that, and there's a great line from Alan Sullivan, "You've just shown us the disrespect that we found you guilty of." Geyer claimed the gesture had been directed at a reporter in the room in Perth. Now, I can't say so far that he's shown himself to be a reliable witness, given some of the things he said years later. What do you think actually happened there, Michael? Or any idea?
It's exactly what I said. He wasn't happy with us, and he displayed it like that. And yeah, good on him. He wore his heart on his sleeve, that's for sure. But yeah, so sometimes you got to, back then it would have been the night to pull his head in a little bit, but he didn't quite do that. So and I suppose the rest is history.
We'll discuss where Mark Geyer went from there in a minute, with Curtis particularly. But Michael, you broke new ground for the judiciary at that time by bringing in a computer with a list of sentences and offences each time, and you went through them, and that later became the basis of the entire judicial system in rugby league. It was formalised by Super League and adopted by the NRL. But I got the impression at the time it wasn't appreciated by the establishment, because you suddenly weren't there on a Tuesday night. What happened?
Yeah, basically it's sort of I'm not sure really why the judiciary side and that changed a bit, but I think it was probably more the fact that Super League wanted extra numbers on the numbers side and things like that. So, but yeah, so I sort of got together. I approached John Quayle and told him that it's very difficult if you're on a case one week, but then you're not called up next week for the other people to see what you handed down. So it's he allowed me to get the funding, and I actually just used a local Wollongong guy that was starting to get into that sort of the computer side with the videos, and we started a rating system up, and it was really helpful actually, and it worked a great deal in helping getting more parity in the sentencing and stuff like that. And you could say, okay, well, that was a grade 3. Was that as bad as that? No. Well, okay, we'll make that a grade 1 or whichever. So it was certainly, the early days with computers back then, and so it made it a little bit clunky, but it certainly helped us along. And yeah, I was quite happy to get all that set up and take it forward. And but then, with what happened with the Super League was like everything. I think it was like, you had to have your numbers right. There had to be a Super League person and a normal league person. And I think that's sort of how it all came about.
Do you think you get enough credit, Michael, for sort of inventing that system and that sort of, transparency and precedent to the judicial code, which was, before that, it was very dramatic, wasn't it? There was Jim Comans and and then Alan Sullivan, and there were these sort of almost like godlike judgments at the end of every hearing, and it became a scientific thing. Now we don't even hear from the panel. We don't hear from the chairman.
No, exactly, and that's what I was trying to achieve. It's sort of all I wanted to do is because the biggest problem back then was the perceived inconsistencies, and I thought, well, if we can look at a video of an incident last year and that got a certain grade, well, then we can use that as comparison in any judgment, and at the end of the day, I think it has worked pretty well. And you really, I actually didn't even know who was on the judiciary until I read the names until last night. I think they changed around a little bit as well, but now with all the guilty pleas and all that stuff, that's sort of changed it around as well with it. But mate, I was quite happy to put my head in the ring for that back in the days, and I think it was a good way forward.
Mark Geyer went on to have a very successful media career, and he told his employers, Triple M, in that audio that we've been listening to, he deeply regretted the incident with Martin Weeks.
And I'm teaching my kids never to show dissent towards officials, and I want to try and. This is one wrong I want to right today because I think it's one rule you do. You never question authority. And
now, as the tribunal will, as you said, Michael, the tribunal will sort of lecturing MG after you called him back in. He actually broke down crying, and this wheel of this thing that they were doing on Triple M, the wheel of apology.
But now we've got the man himself on the line.
No.
Martin Weeks, welcome to the grill team.
Thanks, fellas. Thanks very much.
Mate, what are your memories of that game in '96? And
Just your memories in general of MG, officiating MG.
See, that was the game where he, the infamous saying of, I know where you live. And
did you feel threatened by that?
Oh, yeah, at the time I did. But Mark was misunderstood.
Well, he just wanted to send you, maybe he just wanted to send you a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah, no, I accept his apology. As I say, he's misunderstood by a lot of people. The hard men in league misunderstood him. Wally Lewis, Mario Fennick misunderstood him. I think even Greg Dowling may have misunderstood him.
Okay.
But,
are you still in Western Australia, Weeksy?
Yeah, still in Perth.
Same address, by the way. Same address by any chance?
Even after apologising a decade later, Martin Weeks put the slipper in after MG said he was sorry. Have you ever had a cause to discuss this with Michael, in the years since?
No, not really. It's sort of, probably, up to the sort of late 90s, being involved with it. But basically from that, it's sort of, I haven't had any opportunities to cross his path. Look, like I played against him. I think I actually played in his first game. So I think we played played Penrith up there, and he was his first grade game. So it was like the boy wonder coming through. It's bloody good player. And so that I'm really it's sort of not one of those ones that he'd never pick me out for anything to say anything. So what goes on the judiciary stays in there.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the first WLF Milestones, trying to do a little bit more evergreen content rather than ambulance chasing. Support the show at patreon.com/White Line Fever. Please subscribe and check out all the links in the show description. Thank you, Curtis, and thank you, Michael.